What's going on, everybody? It is that time again, the Sooners Illustrated podcast, episode 91
91.
on this Monday, June 17th, 2024. Josh Callaway, James E. Jackson, Tom Green. We have a very unorthodox start to the show here. So we'll peel behind the curtain. We've already recorded the whole show, which is going to be with you in about 5 minutes. But after we finish recording, or actually just at the tail end of while we finish recording, Oklahoma landed Marcus Harris. So we said, all right, let's hop back in the studio. Let's record a new open, and then we'll have the rest of the show as it was normally. So we'll dive right into it. Marcus Harris, if you're unfamiliar, he's really good. 4-star wideout. He's our number 28 wideout. He's the composite number 17 wideout from Mater Dei High School, which is obviously a powerhouse out there in California. This was the guy that was not supposed to even be visiting this past weekend. We talked about that on Friday. He was a late add to the visit list for the pre-Champ U barbecue weekend. It came together really suddenly. He had a top 5, a couple months ago that didn't have OU in it, and now he's an OU commit. This is crazy. What a gift for Emmett Jones, guys. I mean, obviously this just happened, but just reaction. This is kind of wild. What a huge win for Oklahoma here.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's only been a year and a half or so, but this is what Emmett Jones does.
Yep.
You look at what he's done to just kind of like reshape that wide receiver room, which, as we've discussed multiple times, like going into last season, that room was such a big question mark, and now it's arguably the strongest position on the team and deepest. You look at the guys that he's added since he's been here: Zion Kearney, Elijah Thomas, Ivan Carrion, Zion Reagans, KJ Daniels, bringing in portal guys like Dion Burks. Obviously, they got Andro Anthony last year too, and just from a developmental standpoint, like he's shown what he is capable of doing in that room. And to bring in Marcus Harris, who, like you said, 2 months ago did not even have Oklahoma in his top 5. 5 days ago wasn't even scheduled to visit Oklahoma, and now he's committed to them. Almost a top 150 player in this class, and now they've got 3 composite 4-star wide receivers committed to that 2025 class between him, Grayson Harris, and Elijah Thomas. I mean, dude, Emmett Jones is just deserves all the credit in the world for what he's been able to do in a relatively short time in Oklahoma. And it's like, this is the kind of recruiter that you need. And we know what kind of recruiter Todd Bates is. We know what kind of developer Bill Beatonbow is. But to have a guy like Emmett Jones just be able to bring in that kind of talent at a position like that, I mean, you can't put a number on what that brings value-wise to the program.
Right.
I mean, should I give an applause to Tom? Because that's pretty much sums up the entire thing. Like, that's exactly what this situation is. Like, Emmett Jones is just that good at his job that he's pretty much getting anybody he wants at this point. I mean, this is insane. Like, you get a guy, as Tom said, you get a guy that wasn't even scheduled. Like, they were in the top 5. He wasn't scheduled to visit OU, and he gets all of that over the weekend, pretty much. Like a weekend, You get a 4-star receiver who a lot of teams were after. There's so many teams after this guy, and so the pitch that Emmett Jones can give, I mean, it's just incredible what he's doing. I mean, it's just incredible. That Tom summed it up pretty well. I mean, I can't really add much more to that because I've already said this wide receiver room is the strongest on the team. I mean, adding him is just incredible. I mean, I don't know what else to say about it.
Yeah. And you look at the top 5 that he put out there a couple months ago. It's not like you're beating a bunch of nobodies. You're beating teams that are top 15 programs, teams that are either made the college football playoff last year or expecting to be in it this year. Tennessee, Georgia, Oregon, Texas, and Alabama. I mean, that's not nobody that you're stealing this kid from. I mean, again, like just all the praise in the world right now to Emmett Jones for what he's been able to do with that wide receiver room.
Unbelievable pull. Like I said, unbelievable pull. To just get this kid who has a top 5, for 2 months now. It doesn't have you in it, and then you schedule the visit on Thursday. He comes in for the weekend, and he's committed on Monday. That's nuts. That's insane. So what a huge get for Oklahoma. Wild turn of events, not something I expect to happen today. And they just, the fact that he was visiting at all was kind of impressive. Like, wow, they got this thing scheduled. What a big deal to even get him into campus like that. And now he's on the board in 2025.
Close the deal.
Class is going together really nicely.
Because he's hearing offers from everybody. I mean, all these schools we talked about all have the resources to get a guy like this. So it's just incredible. I mean, to pull him like, I mean, it's insane.
Emma Jones. All right, so we'll now pass it off to the rest of the show. Also, one other thing that happened while we were finishing, later on in the show, we'll get into the NiJaree Canady stuff. She's officially in the portal. That also happened right after we finished recording. So we kind of talk all about it. It doesn't change anything about what we said, but we kind of kept it speculative. She's in the portal. So whenever we get there, keep that in mind. She is in the portal.
Yeah.
All right, so let's kick it to ourselves for the rest of the show. Yeah, what a weird Monday. On to us. What's going on, everybody? It is that time again. The Sooners Illustrated Podcast, episode 91. On this Monday, June 17th, 2024, 74 days from the opener. Josh Callaway, James Z. Jackson, Tom Green with you on a Monday. Big recruiting weekend for Oklahoma last weekend. A big one, huge one coming up this coming weekend. Already reaping the benefits. OU's on the board in 2026. Again, we're going to talk about that a little bit here on the front end. Under the radar players in 2024. Guys not getting talked about enough who could be a big part of the team this upcoming season. We're going to break that down. And then OU softball is doing that evil empire thing again. Maybe we'll talk about that a little bit on the back end as well. But guys, like I said, it was a big recruiting weekend. I talked about that on the Friday show with Colin. There's a huge one coming up, Champ U Barbecue. Most fans are very familiar with that at this point. That's coming up in a few days. But Oklahoma is already reaping the benefits, already bringing some guys in over the last couple of days. The big one, the most notable, Ryder Mix, 2026 tight end, committed over the weekend. This is not a guy that I was super familiar with before last week. But James, you and I were at camp on Thursday along with Colin. Ryder Mix was there working at Brent Venables football camp number 3. And they looked apart. Didn't take long for him to stand out. We're kind of like, who is this guy? And he had no OU offer. And sure enough, he commits over the weekend. James, I know you got to talk to his father, right? So I'll let you start. Oklahoma on the board in 2026. They already have Jonathan Hatton. Now they add Ryder Mix. Pretty strong start here, but maybe give people an idea from what you saw from him, talking to his dad, just kind of paint the picture a little bit for this guy, what Oklahoma's getting here.
I mean, like you, I didn't really know much about him beforehand. Right. I went over to his father just because I thought Ryder had stood out a lot more than maybe that was being led on from the other guys out there. But I thought he looked really, really good. I had him as one of my best guys on the field, and I went to his father just kind of like, hey, I think he looks pretty good. You know, in those type of situations. He was like, yeah, we really like it down here. You know, I played baseball here, but way back when I was like, oh, really? Oh, okay, that's good. I was like, is he planning on making a commitment soon? Like, because I know he's young. He's a younger guy. He was like, yeah, we don't want to run this thing out. We want to get this done pretty quickly. So it was that type of situation. I didn't think it was going to be OU at that point in time. Very quickly. I thought when he said that, I'm thinking, okay, maybe right before the season, and he's going to do some more. Yeah, not 2 days later. And so it was still a surprise to me, even after talking to him. So I think he stood out. I mean, there was a rep that I wrote about where Malik Hawkins kind of grabbed him, he was covering him in a one-on-one rep, and his shirt got pulled over from the back of his back of his shirt was over his eyes in the middle of the rep. He takes it off of his head, does another move, and finishes the rep and almost catches the ball. But Malik Hawkins made a good play and knocked it out. But I was like, man, that's crazy, the amount of effort he's giving to this situation, because he already had an offer from OU at the time. It wasn't like he just needed to make that rep happen. And so I thought that was pretty cool. I think it showed a lot about his character and his motive that he's going to bring to this team. So that's kind of the one I started with. And I had pictures of it on there on the board and everything like that. So if you want to see it, it's all on our website. Check it out.
Yeah, size, physicality. It didn't take long. At these camps, there's so many players, but it doesn't take long for the guys who are capable of playing at somewhere like OU to kind of differentiate themselves. It's a composite 4-star down there in Frisco. Tom, they already have Jonathan Hatton, who we talked about. We talked about on the show a few times. Very highly touted. I know, obviously, our recruiting insider, Colin Kenny, thinks the world of Jonathan Hatton. Now you bring in Ryder Mix. We've also talked about, Jaden O'Neal, the 2026 quarterback, which OU seems to be in good position for. It's a nice start to 2026. I know 2025 is the focus right now. Yeah. Obviously, that's the class. But 2026, nice start.
Yeah, it's always kind of crazy how, recruiting, you're always a year or two ahead. Obviously, Jonathan Hatton's been committed for a while, but to get another guy on board already before he's even going into his junior season, pretty good pickup. Like you said, you guys saw him up close last week at camp, and he impressed there. I mean, you look at what he did as a sophomore. playing in Texas, where obviously the level of high school football is really high. I mean, he had 16 receptions for 248 yards and 3 touchdowns as a sophomore. He's 6'4", 220 pounds, could still grow some more. And I think this just shows kind of the added emphasis that, you're getting on that tight end H-back position with Seth Luttrell as offensive coordinator, with Joe John Finley as co-offensive coordinator. Like they're clearly trying to rebuild that room and make it more of a strength and kind of a point of emphasis on that offense. Because, I mean, we haven't sugarcoated it all. That position was, the weakest on the team last season. We think it's going to be a lot better this season. And I think they're just trying to, stack those classes and kind of keep that room in good shape moving forward.
I spoke to Jay. I know you mentioned Jaden O'Neal, so I want to just throw it out there. I spoke to him after the camp just to, kind of get a feel on where he's at and meet him and things like that. I met him and his dad, and those two are they're very professional. Like you wouldn't think that they're that, polished in media training and speaking that early, but those two guys, I mean, they're amazing. I really felt like they knew what they were talking about. They're very comfortable. I asked him about, because he's from California. I was like, how are you dealing with the humidity out here in Oklahoma? He was like, I actually like it better. I was like, oh, is that right?
Yeah.
I'm like, is the ball travel different or something like that? And he was like, I actually get more grip on the ball because of the humidity, so it kind of makes things easier. And I was like, oh, okay, all right. I agree with that. Yeah. So I think that's a good sign for OU. And it seems like coming out of it, it seems like a lot of people are thinking he's like OU's leading for him, and it kind of looked like that, just kind of based on when I was talking with him. And I had the whole details on the website. Once again, you could check that out on our website, 24/7 Sports, Sooners Illustrated. But just check that out. I think he gave a lot of good insight. He's a very well-rounded kid. He likes I'm blanking on the name of the internship that OU does right now. What is it called? The Soul Mission. I was blanking. Yeah, he really likes that, and so that's paid really well for him. He said that separates OU from the other programs is that Soul Mission. So
100%. And it's funny because Lincoln Riley leaves, and there was, is Oklahoma still going to be able to recruit high-level offensive players, specifically quarterbacks, and they land on their feet really well with Jeff Levy. And then Jeff Levy's left, and it's like, okay, and it just shows that it doesn't really matter. OU's going to always be fine in this area. The lineage of quarterbacks and offensive skill players, guys the NFL playing right now, that high school guys see every single weekend, they're going to be just fine. So 2026, off to a strong start. Ryder mix. While he's a 2026 guy, a crazy impressive offer list. He's got 28 offers, and there's a bunch of blue bloods on there. I think I'm just trying to remember. I know Ohio State, I want to say LSU, Florida State, Auburn's in there. Like it's Tennessee, I think. It's impressive. So to lock him down, very nice get to go with Jonathan Hatton. They also added another PWO, which we've talked about, the three of us, how well Oklahoma's made use of their PWOs with, getting them taken care of in NIL and things like that. Devin Owen, excuse me. He used to be committed to Navy. He's a safety, so he brought in as a PWO last night. Colin had a great story about him with a bunch of quotes. If you want to learn more about him, that's on the website as well. But Oklahoma already, making some headway off of a big recruiting weekend. And if you're a VIP subscriber, you know that they've made some progress on some other guys coming out of that weekend as well. So be sure to mosey on over there, subscribe, and you'll be all in for that. And then Champion Barbecue coming up this weekend, which is a massive weekend. 1 billion guys are coming, and Colin and I will get into that a lot on the Friday show. Yeah, this week.
I mean, Devin, you look at his story, because I read what Colin wrote. He was committed to Navy, so he's thinking Navy. Then was it Emporia State? Was the second school that he was thinking about?
I think I don't know. Did he commit there? I know he visited.
He said he was very excited about Emporia State, and then OU called. It was like, wow. I mean, he's a legacy guy, kinda. With some of his family members played there, so they're at OU. So it was a pretty cool situation for him after reading Colin's story, because as you said, there's quotes throughout it. It's so detailed, like you can really get to learn about the kid. So I think that was pretty cool from him. Like just the path that you take to a Division I school is not always like you be the top guy and then you get these offers and you go that way. It's kind of like it can go any way. So I think it gives a lot of people motivation to keep working at their craft.
And it's just crazy the number of preferred walk-ons on the team that had options at other, to be scholarship players at a lower level. It's OU's going to have a pretty decent, solid contingent of guys who are technically walk-ons, not filling up a scholarship spot, that if probably you need to throw them in whatever case down the road, you probably could fill a void. Like, the roster is getting deeper and deeper with their ability to continue to add PWOs that are useful, which we talked about before. As far as under the radar players, I mentioned that off the top. So we're coming up here, like I said, we're 74 days from the start of the season. We're moving through the summer. SC Me days are on the horizon. They're a little less now, actually, than a month away from starting. Kind of looking at this roster, James and I talked about strongest positions last week. I kind of got to thinking about guys that were not really kind of just forgotten men on the roster. Guys not getting enough shine, not getting talk about, that could be big factors on this team. So I texted you guys last night. I said, let's talk about under the radar players. I know you guys have guys in mind. Tom, you can kick it off if you'd like. Anybody that sticks out to you as far as just maybe guys that, let's not forget about this guy a little bit as we get the season gets a little bit closer.
Yeah, I want to start on the defensive side, and it's a guy that you actually wrote about the other day. So I don't know how under the radar he is, but like compared to some of the other bigger names on defense, I think Deshaun McCullough kind of qualifies there. He was one of Oklahoma's highest rated overall defenders last season, according to Pro Football Focus. He was the 6th highest rated safety in, they kind of count him as a hybrid safety / linebacker in that cheated position, but he was the 6th highest rated safety in coverage among Power 5 safeties that played a minimum of, I think, 275 snaps last season. But he's a guy that, didn't get all the shine last year. I know he dealt with a couple nagging injuries here and there. It was his first year at Oklahoma. Didn't quite have the same kind of numbers that he had put up when he was at Indiana. But I think that, moving forward and also just like splitting time with Kendall Dolby, like people kind of forgot just what Deshaun McCullough was fully capable of when he came over as kind of one of their top transfers last season. But moving into this year, I think we'll see with him healthy that he'll be able to do a little bit more, especially from a pass rushing perspective. That's something that he did really well while he was at Indiana. I think we're going to see him be able to do that more, not just at the cheetah spot, but situationally when they move him over to the will linebacker spot like he was working at times this spring. I think he's going to be able to be a little bit more productive this season and kind of help in some more aspects there. But I think he was one of the first guys that kind of came to my mind as far as under the radar defenders go.
Yeah, I think I've just got distracted by a tweet. Chuck Lilly, assistant director over at OU, talking about our family just got better. I was kind of cryptic, but that could mean something. But yeah, so just talking about some of the guys, you and I talked about it last week, Josh. We were talking about the wide receiver group, and I think between me and you, we named off like every guy that should start or play a really significant role for that wide receiver group. But I think we left off Jaden Gibson. Now, I saw a tweet from him the other day. He was like, I'm always a guy that gets forgotten. And I was like, I hope that's not like something Josh and I did, just leaving him off of there. But he's a guy that I think can be under the radar because even at the time, like we said, we forgot to mention him on, the wide receiver room and things like that. He's a guy that I've really liked for, a while because he's a very passionate speaker. I think he's one of the best motivators on that team and the way he, plays on the field. I mean, we remember when he dragged the guy into the end zone for one of his scores. It was hilarious. So like, it sucks that we forgot about him then, but I think he could be the under the radar guy because this wide receiver group is so deep that sometimes you just don't bring up his name. And so we don't give him props, they're giving him his flowers. And on the defensive side for me, I think Robert Spears-Jennings could be a guy that you kind of pay attention to because he kind of got some run during the later games of the season. And so you saw that they're kind of they have more trust in him now to do what he needs to do. So I think he'll see a lot more playing time this time around. And he could be really good for them. So I think throwing those two guys out there will be my two under radar guys.
Yeah, I agree with James about Jaden Gibson. You guys know that I've kind of been conducting the Jaden Gibson train since the beginning of last season.
Because he's a Florida guy, we know.
Yeah. From Ware Garden, where my brother and my mom basically live right now. But he didn't have like this amazing season last year, but just kind of like the MO that he had as a freshman, as a guy who, was having trouble with drops and, saw that in the spring game a year ago. But for him to kind of come out and like make a statement pretty early in the season. He only had 14 catches, but he was averaging 27 yards per catch. He had 5 touchdowns, which is only behind Drake Stoops and Nick Anderson among OU receivers. He led the team in contested catch rate. He had 4 contested catches on 6 contested throws. It wasn't, I'd qualify it as kind of a miniature breakout because, they weren't overwhelming numbers, but he's a solid guy that if he gets more reps, he's going to make the most of them. And I agree, just because so much attention is on Deion Burks, and I think Nick Anderson maybe sort of, this is going to sound ridiculous, but kind of maybe sort of flying under the radar just because he's coming off a freshman All-American season, 10 touchdowns, but he missed all of spring. And it's nobody's talking about him because everybody's talking about Deion Burks coming out of the spring. But I think Nick Anderson to some extent, but definitely Jaden Gibson. I'm with James on that one. I think he's a guy that can really be an under-the-radar breakout candidate this year.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say, too, with Nick Anderson, I joked about it last week with James. He has a buzz cut now. He's at these camps. He's around. He's around. So he's just literally standing around working with campers. He looks phenomenal. James can attest. He looks, he looks to be in phenomenal shape. I know he missed the spring and everything, but if that is any indication, he's going to be just fine. That receiver room, we talked about it last week, it's so deep that there are a bunch of guys you can make an argument for this. I think Brennan Thompson falls in that category. Just completely maybe the fast guy on the team. And, I don't know how much talk he gets about it all. And then somehow Jacquez Petaway I think falls in that category a little bit too, as far as just the receiver room's just so deep. It's going to happen when you have a Deion Burks and a Farouk and Anderson's back and Angelo Anthony's still roaming around. It's kind of bound to happen. Big one for me, Caden Helms. Remember Caden Helms? He's still on the team. This is a guy who was highly touted out of high school and just has battled injuries, hasn't been around. I think they probably, we talked about it a lot during the season, the tight end room was not what they were hoping for. I think a big part of that was that Cade Helms was out. I think he would have factored in and really been a help, and he just wasn't able to really be on the field. I still think that he's got a chance to be a guy. I think he's a major sleeper for this upcoming season. I know they brought in Bauer Sharp, who we all love and looked great, and I'll say Jake Roberts, and we know that we all think the world of Devon Mitchell as well. But this guy's been around. He knows Joe John Finley really well. And he stuck it out. He felt like such an obvious, maybe portal and look for something else candidate. And he didn't do that. He's still around. He's still here. I just, he's one that I'm kind of just, I'm trying my best to not forget about because it's easy to get excited about the guys they brought in and the new tight ends and everything. But this guy's still around and he was very highly thought of. And he had some nice moments 2 years ago, Brett Venables' first season. He's kind of been snake bitten a little bit, but I'm very interested in seeing him hopefully this fall camp looking good and healthy, and maybe we'll have a good idea that whenever we get to see him in practice, maybe that coming up in a couple of months. But he's a big one for me for under the radar. Anybody else, other guys?
Yeah, I had one other guy that I wanted to touch on. I think he kind of falls kind of in the similar basket as Nick Anderson, whereas he's a starter. He had a solid season, but missed all of spring practice because recovering from injury, and that's Gentry Williams. He started 10 games last season, but was kind of in and out of the lineup on and off the field with that labrum injury. Got that addressed after the season. Missed spring practices, but you're looking at a guy. He started 10 games. He was second on the team in interceptions with 3 behind Billy Bowman's 6. He was a physical corner. Opposing quarterbacks had just a 64.7 NFL passer rating against him. And look, that's better than Billy Bowman was in coverage in that. Better than Woody Washington, better than Kendall Dolby, better than Kenai Walker, better than Peyton Bowen, better than Robert Spears-Jennings. And he allowed just 1 touchdown on 39 targets last season. He's a guy that when he's healthy, he has that star power at corner where he can be a number 1 guy. It's just a matter of him staying on the field. Obviously the spring talked a lot about Woody Washington and, Des Malone coming in and Kenai Walker, stepping up into a bigger role. Kenai Walker played more snaps than Gentry Williams, even though Gentry Williams started 10 games last season. That's just how Gentry Williams' season went with those injuries. So I think he's a guy that if he can stay healthy, he's going to open a lot of eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all about health with Gentry. Sure.
Should I throw in Jacoby Johnson? Maybe. Like, I mean, like he's a guy that could get a lot
One of your
of runs.
guys.
Yeah.
Oklahoma
So like,
guy.
he's an Oklahoma guy like Gentry Williams and Robert Spears. So I mean, he could be because remember the coaches were fighting over should he play offense, should he play defense, pretty much not like fighting, but like they had discussions, and so I think he's really starting to turn heads on the defensive side, and if we could see some playing time this year because just last year he didn't really get a lot of chances because the room was what it was, but I think he's starting to turn some heads here, and so I think he may get some playing time now.
Yeah, I was impressed with him in the spring from what I saw, and I think I had him as one of like my big risers in the spring. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him get a much bigger role and then be able to rotate guys a little bit more in that cornerback room where you don't have to lean on Woody Washington to play 800 snaps this season.
Yeah,
I will throw one more in as kind of my own personal repentance. So I did summer school with Bud Elliott last Friday, right? And I didn't do it last Friday. I recorded a while ago, but it came out last Friday. People go check that out. Great time with Bud as always. We talked about the defensive ends, and I talked about Ethan Downs for a while, and then I kind of got into Caden Wooler bringing him in and how I'm really excited to see PJ Adebawore. I didn't bring up R. Mason Thomas, and I was kicking myself for it afterward.
Yeah,
a couple people reminding me of it. People were quick to remind me, like, how do you not talk about R. Mason Thomas? And they're right. They're right. It was an oversight.
Yeah,
I do not want to forget about R. Mason Thomas. He is a big one, and I'm guilty of it myself. I'm including myself in this. That does not get talked about enough. That he could. I mean, if the season ended and R. Mason Thomas led the team in sacks, would you be stunned? I wouldn't be stunned if that's how the season goes. I mean, he could be a huge part of the team this year. Now, there's a lot of guys who could be a huge part, which is part of why he slipped my mind in that moment because this defense is deep. It's as deep as it's been. But he's a big one that kind of is, I think, maybe not for everyone, but he's at least in the discussion for kind of like, let's not forget about this guy. And again, I'm including myself completely when I say that. He's a big one. He's a big one this year. And he's one of those guys that kind of talk about the defense being as good as it can be. And we all think it could be. He's one that is one of the kind of the flip moment guys. If he's a big part of it with Downs and Woolard and PJ, we think can make that jump. Trace Ford still around. That's a big one for me as well. So
yeah, I agree to an extent. I mean, just because he's another guy that he dealt with like 2 separate ankle injuries last year, so that was limiting his effectiveness and just his playing time overall. So like again, like kind of like a Gentry Williams, like if he can stay healthy, I think like I'm with you. I think he can produce and be one of those guys that kind of elevates that pass rush that a lot of people thought was lacking at times last season.
100%. So we continue to look forward. 74 days to the opener, like I said. We're getting somewhere. SC Media is less than a month away, and we'll continue to keep an eye on it. And like I said, Friday we'll get into it with Colin. I will about Champion Barbecue and all the big recruiting stuff coming this weekend. Before we go, though, I did want to at least bring it up. I think it's just too huge not to. Not that we're going to do a ton of baseball, softball, portal talk, especially not rumors, but this is big enough, I think, that it warranted at least bringing up. So, James, I'll let you steer the ship here again. Obviously, you're a softball guy. So, NiJaree Canady, who's the softball player of the year, right? I mean, she's definitely
USA 2024. Yep,
player of the year for Stanford. Reportedly is in the portal. Now, obviously, Oklahoma doesn't take a genius to make the connection here that Kelly Maxwell is gone, Nicole May is gone. NiJaree Canady's really good. I mean, not that it's a given by any means or a done deal by any means. We're not saying that, but there is a chance that this happens. Oklahoma's going to try. I think that's safe to say. Oklahoma's going to try. Put in perspective, James, you had an article on their website just a day or two ago about kind of examining the pitching situation going into next year for our VIP members. Obviously, any team that can add a player like this, it's huge. But this is a hole that Oklahoma has going into next season. Just kind of paint the full picture of what it would mean and how much stock, where's your belief level that this could actually happen, I guess, right now, as it stands today?
Yeah, just for those people that don't necessarily follow softball as close as we do, like the pitcher is like the quarterback of like a football team. Like this is the main thing that you need to help you recruit the rest of the team. Like OU has some holes now because they graduated 10 seniors and the other things like that. So you bring in a player like this, it's like, I don't know how to put it in football perspective, like because that usually does not happen. Like the player of the year transfers doesn't really make much sense. But
it's like the Heisman kind of like
it would be crazy. So it's like if like when Jordy Ball left OU the first like that time, it's kind of like bringing that type of player back into the OU system, and that's pretty much what it is because she's that dominant of a pitcher that when you have this type of player, it was like, oh, okay, let me check out OU more. I mean, you probably had him high anyway because of what they've done in the past. You bring her in because this is a player that had 334 strikeouts last year and only 44 walks. I mean, that is an insane amount of productivity. And she gave up one run in throughout the College World Series and championship, against Texas. And that was because Texas had a squeeze bunt at the very end of the game to walk off on them. I mean, it was not like they hit her and got a run out of it. It was very difficult to score on her. So bringing this type of player in for Oklahoma would be amazing. It would be very big for OU and what they continue to try to do with this softball program and try to go after 5 in a row, which is unheard of, Josh. It's unheard of. I mean,
Yeah, right.
If you want to make a football analogy, and it's not apples to apples by any means, but it's almost sort of akin to Oklahoma landing Jalen Hurts after he helps Alabama win a national championship. He wasn't a Heisman winner, but you get one of the best quarterbacks in the country to transfer over. And I know it's a different situation with him because, they had Tua at Alabama and all that stuff too. But I think it's a little bit comparable and just kind of like the quality of player that you're adding to a team that has kind of a history of, turning out quality pitchers and stuff like that. So that's my attempt to put it in football terms.
It's wild, and it's crazy because OU softball is the evil empire of softball. That's what happens when you win 4 in a row, and they're as loaded as they are every year, and they make the portal as they make every single year because really good players want to come play for Patty Gasso and OU. But it was hilarious just to watch the reaction on social media. It hasn't even happened yet. Nothing's even happened, and people having softball Twitter was having a meltdown about this. It hasn't even happened. I don't know if she's even technically officially in the portal.
Exactly. That's the thing. But I think it's just like people are like, okay, obviously that she would go there. I think it's that type of situation to where people are like just upset. It's like, remember the Golden State Warriors and they got DeMarcus Cousins that year in the offseason. They still had
Kevin Durant.
Like it was just like, oh my gosh, like they're gonna really. It's gonna be one of those things. I think that's the type of situation it is, and so people are reacting to it, even though it hasn't necessarily been a thing yet, or it may not even. She may not even get in the portal. I mean, it's just like that. We've heard sources from the Kansas reporters out there where she's from. She's technically from and things like that. So that's where all of this kind of steam kind of picked up was from them saying that. So that's just where it is right now. I think it's still a wait and see at this time because we don't know for sure if she's actually in the portal, but let's just keep a watch out for it.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that she's from Kansas. So not that Oklahoma and Kansas is the same, but it's a lot closer to Stanford if she wanted to be, closer to her family.
Yeah. And Stanford moving conferences, going to the ACC, which is that conference that's kind of all over the country now. And when you're not playing football, that could be a lot more strenuous, in terms of how many games you play and the travel and trying to get your schoolwork done. And so I think that's played a big part in this. I don't think she just doesn't like Stanford or something like it's not that. I don't think that's the case here. I think that all plays a factor into this. And so if she can be closer to home, I guess that could be, it all kind of makes sense when you think about it. I think that's the situation it is.
Yeah, I can't get over the NBA comparison now. I think like it would be the 73 win Golden State Warriors adding Kevin Durant if the Warriors didn't choke in the finals.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
it's crazy.
That's a sore subject around here. And she's only she's only played 2 years, so she has multiple years. She has 2 years left.
Yeah, freshman of the year, her first year, and then National Player of the Year, second year. She's really, really good.
Yeah, I mean, so we'll keep an eye on it. Obviously, it's a big story, and we'll keep an eye on it. But it's if this is the way it goes, she's definitely going to portal. I mean, you imagine that there's been a lot of talk about Texas being heavily involved, so she's going to have a lot of suitors, obviously. But this is a major throwing your weight around moment if you're OU. If you can find a way to do this, because you lose the players you lost, and I mean they reload. It's what they do. It's crazy. So we'll see. We'll keep an eye on it though. We will see. I think that's it for now. Like I said, I'll be back with Colin on Friday. That's gonna be a big show because we have 2 more Brent Venables camps this week on Tuesday and Thursday. Tomorrow and Thursday. And so we'll wrap all those up with new offers and standouts, all that good stuff. And then we'll do a full Champion Barbecue preview. Colin will have all the goods there as far as the big names to watch, the storylines, all that. Anybody who listens regularly, watches, knows that he knows it all. So we'll be all about that on Friday. 3 of us will rendezvous next week as we continue to just inch closer and closer to getting this thing started with the new season. So I think that's it for now, though. For Tom Green, James E. Jackson, I'm Josh Callaway. We'll see you guys next time right back here on the Sooners Illustrated podcast.
See you.